Hey everybody, I'm Todd and this is Sweet Tea Guitars. Welcome back to the channel and to another installment in the Ultimate Telecaster Build series. Alright you guys, when we left off in the last episode, I had my neck perimeter cut. We had the fretboard flushed up with the side of that. Our tuners are marked out. Everything's ready to roll. We're going to pick back up right where we left off. Let's get to building. I've got my fretboard template clamped down to this fretboard on my center line. Everything's lined up. This is so convenient to have this done for us like this. I don't have to measure and find, the halfway point between both the frets. And this works great knowing we're going with traditional fret marker locations on this guitar. All right, now we can pop this template off here and I can double check myself. We're just gonna correct for any little shift that we may have had. And all I did was just shifted those right over to make sure they're cutting that center line in half. That's what we're doing. I've measured the insert shaft on the back of the tuner. These are hip shot locking chrome tuners with the hip shot button. So we need a 10mm hole in the back. The bushings that insert down in the front, those are 8mm. So what we'll do is drill a 8mm hole all the way through the headstock. When I flip this over, we'll take our step drill and drill a 10mm hole and get that deep enough so that bushing that's on the tuner will slide all the way down and sit flush up against the back of our headstock. That's what we're after. Check this little light out. How cool is that? Rechargeable LED, and it slides around a drill bit up to 10mm. So, boom. That is so cool. Anyway, let's get this done. I want to go very slowly, very gently. What we're going to do now is hop back over to the drill press. I've mounted up my step drill bit. We're going to come in from the back here and drill that to 10mm. So let's get over there and get that done. So as you can see down inside that hole, we've gone about halfway through the thickness of the headstock as it sits now. Yeah, that's perfect. So what I was checking right here, you guys, is to make sure my tuner sits flush up against the back of the headstock. So we're good to go. All right, so let me change out the drill bit over there to a 6mm. We're going to get these fret markers drilled in. I'm excited because the more stuff we get done now, the closer we are to being able to shape this neck. Once you start shaping the neck, it feels like you're reaching a point that you're actually introducing the personality of the guitar into it. And I love that, you guys. It just makes me feel all warm and fuzzy. I'm using a solid carbide 6mm bit that I got from Lee Valley Tools. Really high quality bit. This thing cuts super clean. Let the brad point find that hole. There we go. Nice. They all look like they're on the center line too, so that's a really good thing. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to cut myself some rounds off of this brass tube. Now I'm going to go back in and file that face. That way I know that the part that's being inserted down into the neck is going to rest all the way up against the bottom. So what I'm going to do now is insert these brass tubes down into my fretboard. We just want to coat the bottom of this hole. I'm not going to use any activator because I want to give that super glue time to wick into the wood right here. We'll switch to the Star Bond super fast thin and glue these things in from the outside as well. Gluing these in first will keep these from spinning when I go to saw these off flush with the face of the fretboard. And we'll saw this excess off here to keep us from having to work too hard with the file. We still got to radius this fretboard, so I'm not worried about a few superficial file marks. But we don't want to leave any big gouges, especially on the edges, because we're taking a chance of tearing wood out. We'll run the sanding block across here. I got some used 180 on this medium firm block right here. Just makes quick work of this stuff. I've made a reference mark 2 millimeters from the bottom of my fretboard up on my 21st fret and down here on my 3rd fret. We're going to take our ruler now and I want to draw a line all the way down the side of this thing. This is how I've started to do the side dot markup. I'm using a 0.5 millimeter pencil for this. As you can see right there, there's 3 different areas or 3 different lines you can follow. A 2 millimeter, a 3 millimeter, and a 3/32. Well, we're using the 3 millimeter. We're not going to clamp it completely tight yet because I'm sure we're going to need to adjust it. So I'm going to, first of all, mark these with a pencil. I know these marks are right as far as fore and aft, but up and down, I want to have these directly on the center line. Everything else on the guitar can be perfect. And then you look down the side of your fretboard at your side dots and they're off. It looks shop made. I want my guitars to look as close to manufactured as I can get. It's a level of professionalism and attention to detail. That's what makes a boutique guitar worth the money you have to pay for one. Let's just go down through here and drill in these side dots. I want to be so careful with these things, you guys. I could use an electric drill, but I really like this thing. So, I mean, it's a little slower. It makes a lot less noise. I got this set of Bosch Professional Brad Point drill bits with the hex shank on them. I really dug this set because it's got a 2 millimeter brad point in it, and those can be difficult to find. I'm trying to find a standard when it comes to fret marker material, and so far, crushed opal inside of the brass tube, I think that's probably going to wind up being my standard. You can get it in so many different colors. We're going to take some medium Star Bond, I just want like a half of a drop down inside these tubes. Not very much at all. I got some black right here. Since I'm planning on using black opal, at least we'll already have a start on this. All right, now I'm going to go to my super fast, thin super glue. And I don't have to go all the way to the surface. Again, we can hit this with a sanding block. Let's sand these smooth. This is a piece of used 180. These on the end where my heel's at, I try to hug the outside like that so I'm not taking any material away from the part of the heel that needs to sink down into my neck pocket. I want all the gluing surface and I want a nice snug fit down in there. So yeah, this is working. It's tedious, but it's absolutely working. So I'm going to take some heavy thin and I want to wick this stuff down in these markers as we go here. Yeah, this is super tedious doing this like one little tiny piece at a time. All right, you guys, it's been about probably 7 minutes or so. Now I'm going to hit this with some activator. So last night we got our fret markers cut, we got those drilled in, I got the side dots completely finished. We need to sand those off, but they are filled with that black crushed opal. Today what we're going to do, we'll set up our jig on the spindle sander over here and get our headstock thickness down to within about 1 millimeter of its final thickness. We're going to use black crushed opal just like we did on the side dots. We're going to flood that with Star Bond heavy thin super glue, and I'll just continue to add that as it seeps down into that fret marker location. I'm going with all black. I'm not going to change the color on the 12th like I would normally do. And I think this black's going to contrast nicely. These holes are about 4 millimeters deep or so. I wanted to make sure they were deep enough so I get a nice opaque dot. I think that's going to get us right there. So what I'll do is let that settle in for about 5 or 10 minutes. These fret markers are pretty much dry at this point, but I'm going to hit these with some activator anyway just to make certain, because we want to file this flat at this point. This has got 220 grit on our file board. I'm not putting any downward pressure on it. I'm just letting the weight of my arms do this. I've got my spindle sander set up over here. We're going to thickness this headstock down, and we'll take it up to where it meets that maple and the swoop becomes incorporated into the fretboard. I put a couple of pieces of tape down on my spindle sander here first. I've got a 3-inch drum, 80 grit sanding sleeve on this thing, and what I do every time I set it up, I take a square and I put it up against here like this to make certain that I'm square to the drum. And I've checked this already, and the drum is absolutely square to the bed. So we're all set up and ready to go. I got this set at 16 millimeters, which is going to leave us a little room to do some work on this thing after the fact. I like doing a headstock swoop like this. And a beautiful headstock. I love that. I'm going to take this same file board we got here with this 220 grit sandpaper on it, and we're going to flatten out these side dots real quick. I love this file board. This thing has come in so handy. Our side dots are starting to take shape. What we're going to do is we're going to mark up this fretboard and get this thing ready for a radius job. We're putting a 12-inch radius on this fretboard, which is another change that I'm making from what a traditional Telecaster would be. I've got 80 grit sandpaper on my 12-inch radius block, and we're just going to start getting this radius cut in. Turn the neck around. I just want to watch myself side to side to make sure I'm not, sanding more material off one side than the other. That's one of the reasons why I turn the neck around. All right, I've marked this fretboard up with the pencil. I got my 24-inch leveling beam right here. I always have a tendency to sand fall away into both ends. That's why I've got this clamped in the middle. I've still got pencil from about here back and from about here forward. That lets me know I've got material I need to remove in the middle. You don't want to put much pressure because the neck will give a little, knowing that we're in a vise with no support underneath it. All right, we're good. There we go. That's starting to look glorious. So I'm going to wipe this down with some acetone Now I've got a few little voids in my Opal fill. We're going to hit that with super glue and make sure these are nice and clean. We use heavy thin because I want it to seep down into any little voids that may be in there. What we're going to do now is hop over to the spindle sander, sort out this end of this headstock shape. We're going to come back over to the bench, then we're going to sand this fretboard and polish this fretboard up to 3000 grit. Let's get back to work. I've got a shape scribed on the back of this neck with a pencil. We're just going to sand this up to that shape and then I'll hand sand the rest of it. So let's get this done. I'm going to switch drums on this thing and we'll move up from this 80 grit to a 240 grit drum, and we'll sand around the perimeter of the entire headstock shape, and that'll pretty much get us where we need to be. Very gently. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to sand the fretboard up through these grits of paper. I got 360, 800, 1000, 1500, 2000, 2500, 3000. I've got a soft interface pad on my Super Acelix block here. And on these lower grits, we don't want to spend too long on it. I just want to get the scratches out of it. We were already at 220, so 360 is not a far stretch. We'll clean it between each grit. We're going to 800. We'll go to 1000. 1500 now. I'll make sure I'm not getting my fretboard out of flat here. 2000. And that's looking really good. That curl's starting to poke out. 2500 now. And then finally, 3000 grit. All right, and that's where we're going to leave it, because I'll go back through this process once we apply this penetrating epoxy on here. So there we go. How beautiful. All right, you guys, I think I missed that part. The battery ran out in the camera, but what I did was took the side dots up through 3000 grit, just like we did the face of the fretboard. I did the same thing to this side of the fretboard just to make sure I took the same amount of material off of both sides. So what I want to do now is take some naphtha and I'm going to wipe this fretboard down, sides, front, everything. Nice and clean, nice sheen to it, side dot, same deal. I'll run this tape just a little below my fretboard line. Do the same thing to this side. What we're using for a fretboard finish on this particular guitar is Total Boat penetrating epoxy. This is the cold weather formula. I'm going to do this by weight. We're not going to need much of this stuff. Two to 1. Now I'm going to grab myself a little mixing stick. I just want to blend this together really good. Let's blow out any dust we may have down in our side dots, because we don't want that sealed in. All right, I'm going to take a t-shirt cloth And I'm going to apply this epoxy to our fretboard. I don't want to flood it. I want to kind of wipe it on there. If this stuff dries like it looks on here now, I'm thinking this will be my go-to finish of choice for maple fretboards. All right, so check that out. That is lovely. So I am so pleased with how this turned out. I don't know how well you guys will be able to see this, but that opal just really sparkles in the light, and this fretboard is incredible. I got this fretboard from Shabby Chic Guitars over on eBay, so you guys go give them a look. Beautiful fretboards. I get most of my fretboards from there. Anyway, in the next episode, what we're going to cover, we're going to deep dive into my neck shaping process. I want to get the neck pocket cut, and I'd love to get the perimeter body shape cut out and get this neck glued in. Thank you so much for stopping by the channel, you guys. I really appreciate the time you take to watch the videos. Thank you so much for all the killer comments you leave. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you can stay up to date as I release the rest of the videos for the Telecaster build, as well as everything else I got planned. Don't forget to head over to Gio's channel, give Gio a like and a subscribe. I'll see you guys next weekend, and as always, peace and love.